For you guys that don't know me, my name is Mark Moore. I'm the Director of Sales and Strategic Partners here at BCM One. Kind of a little bit of an overview of me. I've been in the channel about 10 years now. For you guys that have seen me, have heard my name, I used to work for a company called Next Vortex that Claris worked a lot with in the past, mainly doing SIP trunking. So SIP trunking services, voice services, hosted PBX services. Worked a lot with Greg Stiff in the past, and even Chris Torvett in the past. Selling those services. Mike Nowak, who was our leader of our sales organization at Next Vortex. I was always kind of his right-hand man, leading that group. And we both came over to BCM One through the acquisition. Mike is now our CRO of BCM One. And then I took on a role as the director of sales for strategic partners mainly. And now getting into BCM One. So BCM One, for you guys that don't know, BCM One is a full-on solutions provider, I think is the best way to describe us. If you categorized us, you would put us in the aggregator space of carriers. I don't like the word aggregator only because a lot of times you can use bolt-on providers or even white label things and call it your own, where you don't really own or have any proprietary services tied to you. And that's not what BCM One is. BCM One, with every service that we offer, so that's voice, that's data, that's technology expense management. We either own and operate the entire network and service, or we have a proprietary element to it to make it our own, right? So you'll see that on the carrier side for network services and data, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But we are unique in that we do. We have those proprietary elements, which sets us apart from a lot of the aggregators in the space. You can kind of see our history, been around since 1992. Back then we were selling POTS lines, T1s, PRIs, stuff like that. Over the years, we actually were kind of like Claris in a way. We were our own kind of mini master agent. And this, and relatively quickly found that was not the right space for us to be in. And then we were acquired by private equity, and then over the past 6 years, I believe now, we are on path to acquire companies where, again, they have that proprietary element or unique solution that we can add to our complete portfolio and umbrella. So today, again, we are what you would consider an aggregator, but I'll go over some of those different solutions and product offerings that we have today that does set us apart and makes us unique in the channel and as well in the aggregator space. Primary verticals do a lot with the GEM sector, which is, if you're familiar with Next Vortex, did the same thing. So the GEM is what I consider government, education, medical. So healthcare, education, government, those are big ones. We do a lot in the financial space. And again, this is mainly for voice and data services, whether it's hosted voice, SIP trunking, or Teams, which I'll speak a little bit on separately, as that's been kind of the big buzzword and one of our main go-to market strategies. Also, we do a lot in the retail space, but mainly on the carrier, on the data side, not as much on the voice side. But definitely have a presence there with some well-known entities doing network aggregation and mass circuit distribution. So just some verticals there. And then the office locations, you can kind of see we're heavy on the East Coast, but do have a West Coast presence there in Seattle. But it just so happens that most of our offices through acquisitions have been on the East Coast. So we're relatively, if you're going to an office or visiting an office, it's more than likely going to be on the East Coast. I'm actually in the Grand Rapids office here in Michigan, so not too far away from you guys. I am on the far end of the Eastern time zone though. So a lot of people ask me that, oh, you're Central. No, I'm not Central time zone. I am Eastern time zone. So, just some fun facts there, but we are definitely a full, US and even global company as far as our customers go. Mostly obviously here in North America, United States and Canada. But we do have a global presence, especially with our newest acquisition, and to be able to manage those customers, we do have international presence in the Philippines, and that's mainly for your tier 1 support and billing. Most of our tier 2 and above and NOC support are here in the States, and all of our tier 1 voice mostly is here in the States as well. Again, this slide's kind of redundant. The only reason I like showing this one off is, other than the office locations, you can see our presence nationwide here. I guess worldwide if you consider the Philippines and El Salvador. But you got your NOCs. So we have NOCs, spread out throughout the United States. One in the Philippines, one in El Salvador. Those are those blue squares. And then we have data center or POP presence, and you can see those are kind of spread out. And these vary, right? So we have on like the SIP side, for instance, we have that spread across the United States, everywhere from Virginia all the way to LA. And then the network and the teams, SBCs, all that presence is kind of spread out throughout. So that data center or point of presence, those vary based on the solution, but very much a lot of it is interconnected. Why is that important, right? It's very important for redundancy. If there is a hurricane that wipes out the Southeast, some companies would be in trouble if they have their presence mainly in the Southeast. We have them, strategically located, that if one part of the country, or hell, even half of the country is brought down for some sort of attack or natural disaster, you have that confidence that we have that presence throughout the United States and even worldwide, that we would be able to keep our services up and running. So the portfolio that BCM One has kind of segmented in 2 different divisions. You got the next gen communication, so that's the voice division, and then you got the managed services division. So that's your connectivity, your SD-WAN, managed firewall, your SASE and security play, your network monitoring and management. Those all kind of go hand in hand. And then lastly is our technology expense management. So that one's kind of its own separate division within the managed services, and I'll touch on that in a second. But starting with the next gen communications, so I come from a background in voice, and like I said, SIP trunking. So I'm heavy in voice. Most of the partners, especially you guys, we're mainly whether we're introduced as a voice provider, or we're only selling voice. I do have a lot of partners that sell voice just based on my expertise. With that said, voice is a good segue into our other services. So chances are, if I get a chance at SIP trunking or Teams or UCAS, because of my portfolio, it opens the door that I can manage pretty much everything in that customer's network on the technology side. And I like to start usually with voice because that's usually the one where a lot of competitors of mine don't want to have any, any presence in. So I like to start with the difficult ones first, get those out of the way, and then the relatively what I would consider easy or more straightforward on the connectivity and SD-WAN side. I like to use my leverage and earning the trust with the customer on the voice side before I get to the managed services. But you can go either way on that. You don't have to come to BCM One just for voice or for connectivity. You can start on the connectivity side, earn their trust that way, and then, oh, by the way, we have all these PRIs that we're looking to move. Can you do it? Yes, or how do you do it? We do like to, in being an aggregator, we like to have as much of the pie as we can get. But I like to be careful about that, only because you guys as a partner of mine, I like to be very strategic on it, because if there's something that we can't do or we're not that good at doing, I want to make sure that you guys have the confidence that I will not sell, I won't put a square peg into a round hole. I'm very upfront, and I make sure that if I'm not a good fit, that I will tell you and the customer, hey, this is not a good fit. This is why we're not a good fit. Appreciate the opportunity. We can do this, this, and this, but these things that you want, we're not going to be able to do. Why is that important? I think it's pretty obvious. I don't want this to cause a headache for you guys, for us. This is a partnership. It's a relationship. I want to keep, the good orders coming in, and we don't want this to be stressful, not only for you guys, but for my team too, to manage it and support it. So it does us no good if we try to force something in when I know it's not something we're good at or have experience with. So you do have that reassurance with BCM One that we only stick to the things that we're good at, we're experts at. And looking at this slide right here, I would say we're definitely an expert on the voice side with Teams. Teams is our go-to product. And of course, that comes from the SIP trunking world. And a lot of that comes from the Next Vortex acquisition. And then with that, we do have our own UCaaS platform like most carriers do. I would say I use it more as a add-on or to fill in gaps within Teams or SIP trunking. Teams doesn't have all the capabilities that a lot of UCaaS offerings have. So I use it as a gap filler. They need a small contact center. They need, features that go beyond the normal everyday, user calling to the PSTN. The UCaaS can be used to fill those gaps, and we can use them and pair them together with Teams, and we do it very well. On the managed services side, I think it's pretty relatively straightforward how that works. We utilize all the major carriers, and then we put our own proprietary monitoring suite attached to it. So that's kind of that unique play there. Every single connectivity, whether it's a 4G LTE all the way up to a DIA MPLS circuit, we have that monitoring suite that will pair with it. We can even add it to sites that are not utilizing our connectivity options. So if you have a customer with many sites that all vary in the time that they go out of contract, you can use our monitoring suite on top of that circuit that we don't own, and it's all IP based. So basically, if they want to still have it all under one umbrella to manage all of their sites, they can do that with our monitoring suite. So that proprietary monitoring suite that we have, obviously we would love to have it with a BCM One, managed circuit, whether that's through AT&T or Verizon, Lumen, whoever is in that area. But if that's not possible, or if they're under contract and this is part of a migration, we can add that monitoring suite to an existing circuit. So that's a little uniqueness there. The rest of it, manage SD-WAN, manage firewall, pretty straightforward on the capabilities there. I would say there's not a ton of differentiation on that side. It's more that we can do it and complete the solution, right? And then lastly, the technology expense management. This is unique because not a lot of providers like us have our own technology expense management suite. This is 100% proprietary. This is not third party. This is owned, managed, and operated by BCM One. And we actually created it for a customer that had voice and data with us, and we're looking for billing expense management. So we actually created our own. It was for a large enterprise customer. And again, it was to complete the solution. So I'll be honest with you, we don't sell a ton of it. It's very much for the enterprise level customer, but it does work. It does work very well. And I do use it as a selling point, to get us in the door, that we do have it. If it ever comes to a need, we can use it to complete the sale. Our newest acquisition, and I'll touch on this very lightly, is Pure IP. So Pure IP is a full-on Microsoft Teams provider, voice-enabled Teams. And why this one's important is because of the international presence. So I kind of wanted to let you guys know that this kind of completes, mainly we're in the North America. Through this acquisition, this was very strategic because of the international presence and the ability to do full PSTN replacement in over 47 countries, provide services in over 137 countries, and 600 organizations supported globally. And the other thing about this is BCM One was always direct routing certified, and with this acquisition, we can now do Operator Connect. So if you ever have a customer who comes to you wanting either Operator Connect or direct routing, you can come to us for this. We're just completing this acquisition, so this will be fully integrated most likely by the end of the year. And this kind of goes into the countries that we can support and utilizing pure, local calling in those countries. So value prop, I kind of touched on this, but I'll quickly go over this again. So people come to us because they have all these different services and all these different providers, and they're looking for one entity or maybe one or two entities that can manage it and make it easier for them to manage, from a billing, from a tech support, IT support, and all that. So you kind of look at what it's like without BCM One. You have all these different products, services, locations. You got arrows going everywhere. You got all these escalation lists all over the place, and it makes it very difficult for all your teams to manage, whether that's billing, whether that's accounting, IT support, backend, accounts payable, all that. BCM One checks all or most of those boxes, just because we're managing those services, whether they're in-house or through one of our partners. All the billing comes through us, so it makes it very easy for billing and accounting to manage. The IT team loves it because we have experts that are segmented in that product or service, so you're not going to get a lot of overlap of generalists that know a little bit about a lot of things. We have our tech support tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 that are segmented for that. So if it's SIP trunking, if it's UCAS, if it's network aggregation and support, those things are all managed by segmented dedicated reps. So that makes it really important, and obviously when a customer calls in, makes it easier for them because they're talking to an expert and not talking to a generalist. Sophia, this is our technology expense management. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive into it completely. But why is it important? One, is proprietary. We own it. We operate it. And again, it's kind of like the final piece of the puzzle. I've used it both ways. I've used it to help close a sale because, we needed that little extra edge, whether it was just doing voice or voice and data or a combination of the two. Or I've actually used it to start a sale. So customers complaining about bills, network aggregation, all this stuff, and they had no way to pull all their sites. So I brought in Sophia, and we moved everything over. Now we have an ability to see all their sites, and now we can go in there and start making changes. That's huge for you guys because as a partner, you'll have access to it as well. So you get an inside scope on all of your customers' expenses and where you can help save them money, right? And that doesn't have to be through us. You could sell them Sophia, and you could sell them other services, and we would have no problem with that. Our goal is to give this to you and the customer to help with spend in just ease of management. You got all these different sites. It's not easily reported on, and it's hard to get a detailed breakdown for each site and all the different services. You use this to get that, and then work, I guess backwards in getting all the sites, and then finding out all the potential cost savings that you can do with it. It's very unheard of that a company like us has that in this space. Typically, if you're a technology expense management provider, you really only do that. So it is unique to have that for a provider like us. Again, I'm not going to go into it, but there's some slides on it. Typical customer size.
Mark, we do have a couple questions. Are you about at the end, or do you
I'm right at the end. So why don't I finish up, and then we can get to the questions.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
Just typical customer size, guys. We do mainly on the mid to large. And you can kind of look at the customer profile. It's all the things that we kind of talked about. Lack of IT resources, dissatisfied with their current provider. You got products and services and support all over the place. And I did want to get to the last slide, which is like the profile. So this is a real life customer of ours, Learfield Communications. They're kind of right in your guys' backyard. Their headquarters is in not Springfield, but Jefferson City. And they handle all the marketing and radio broadcast for the NCAA. So kind of what they are, they started off needing really voice services, and wanted the ability to move over all their circuits as well, and then eventually their billing and move it to our TEMS. So all the things that we talked about, they've really hit on. So when you guys talk about an ideal customer, and you can read through the details here just for the sake of time, I'm not going to, but they would be considered an ideal customer because they have every service that we offer: UCAS, Teams, SIP trunking, network and circuits, TEMS, SD-WAN. They have it, and they all did it through a segmented plan that started with voice. So, and that is the end. So questions. Sorry, it took about 5 minutes too long, but I tried to go as fast as I could.
That was great. And the first question, you did just kind of touch on it, so I don't know if you have anything more to add, is what is your ideal client?
Yep. So again, ideal client is someone who is looking for, they have a couple problems, not just one, but I would say, they're looking for a migration of their PRIs or their premise systems. This customer, Learfield, they had old Mitel 3300s and Cisco call managers. This happened because of an acquisition that they had. One had Mitel, one had Cisco. It was a mess, right? And then they eventually said, hey, some of these have PRIs. Can you guys do that? Can you do PRI handoff? And then eventually we want to move to Teams. Can you do that? Yes, we can. We can do all those things. So from a voice perspective, we are an expert because we have all of those pretty much solidified. the big buzzword today is Teams. So I would say our ideal customer is someone who is either migrating from PRI or PRIs or from SIP or UCaaS, and then migrating to Teams. So you would either start them off on utilizing our SIP services and our managed SIP services, eventually move them to Teams, and then eventually get into the guts of what powers the SIP trunking in the voice, and try to take their manage their circuits and SD-WAN as well. So this would be the ideal customer for sure.
Okay, and the next question is, do you have a monthly minimum?
That is a good question. We do. A lot of it's case by case, because a lot of our customers, it's not uncommon for them to say, hey, I want to start off with, maybe 5-10 users at a time. So if it is part of a migration, I would say no, there's no minimum. If it is a small customer, we'll gladly take it. On the UCaaS side, it's about 10 users. On Teams, it's also 10 users. On SIP, there is no minimum. On circuits, there is no minimum. So a lot on the circuit side is case by case, or on the internet and network side, it is case by case. If someone just wants a 4G LTE connection, we'll probably say, what else do you need? Because there's not enough meat on the bone for that. They'd be probably better off going directly to the carrier. But again, a lot of it is case by case.